At the conclusion of this lesson, you'll be able to recommend if buying or renting a home is better given a set of circumstances. What's the percentage of people that own homes? It was 64.8% in 2018. It's the American dream to buy a home. But is buying a home a better investment than other types of investments? Should you buy a home or rent? Choosing between buying a home or renting is a complicated decision with many factors and personal preferences. What can you afford? Do you have money for a down payment? Will you have money to pay bills after buying a home? What other debts do you have? And number two, how long do you plan to stay in the home? If it's less than 3 years, you should probably rent. If it's 3 to 5 years, either will work. But if it's 5 years or more, then you should try to own it. Number three, do you want stability or flexibility? Number four, can you afford to be responsible for home repairs and maintenance? Number five, what are your financial, career, and family goals? And finally, number six, where do you want to live? Big cities have a higher cost of living. It's usually better to rent. Areas with lower cost of living, it's usually better to own. Let's watch this quick video.
But they don't usually have any other out-of-pocket maintenance costs. So is it better to rent or is it better to buy a home? That is a question that virtually everybody asks themselves at one point. Well, guess what? We here at How to Adult have an answer for you, and that answer is, it depends. It depends on you. It depends on things such as your desired lifestyle and your finances. So here are a few things to consider to help you answer that question. Part 1, lifestyle. So maybe you'll see yourself reflected in some of these things. Let's talk renters' lifestyle. Renters tend to move around more. Renters are free to chase job opportunities in other cities or states. They don't have to spend their nights and weekends having to do maintenance work on their house or their lawn, but they do tend to pay for that luxury in the form of, on average, higher monthly housing payments. What about the homeowner's lifestyle? Well, homeowners tend to be more settled. Like owning a house is typically thought of as putting down roots. The transaction costs of buying and selling a home are high, so it's not a good idea to do it often. In fact, the average house needs 5 years of appreciation to earn out the closing and selling costs. At the same time, that stability can be really nice for people with kids or with pets or people who need that sense of consistency in their lives. As long as they're not breaking any rules or laws, homeowners are free to renovate or upgrade their house, which is something that in general renters are not able to do. So if you're someone who likes to really make a place your own, then like owning a home might be for you. P.S. Let me know in the comments, does anybody else watch Rehab Addict? I know it started in like 2009, but guess what? I just started watching Modern Family. I'm usually about 5 to 6 years behind the curve. I'm not going to do an impression right now, but I could. You better believe I could. On the other hand, if spending your weekends painting a fence or whatever, if that sounds like torture to you, then you've got 3 options. 1, hire that work out. 2, just plan on continuing to rent. Or 3, become Tom Sawyer, which is what I'm doing. Part 2, finances. Renters typically have higher monthly housing payments, but they don't usually have any other out-of-pocket maintenance costs. And some of those costs can get really big, really fast. Really big, really fast. Once a renter signs a lease, their monthly payments are locked in, so you don't have to have like big emergency maintenance funds if you are a renter. Homeowners, meanwhile, do enjoy that lower monthly payment, but they still have to deal with getting a new roof every 10 years and a new water heater every 7 years, and etc. Renters may enjoy a locked-in monthly rent payment for the 1 or 2 years that their lease runs, but homeowners tend to have a locked-in monthly mortgage payment that doesn't change for 30 years. So think about that for 1 second. Imagine if you could freeze your rent so that it never goes up for the next 30 years. And then after those 30 years of paying rent have passed, they go away forever. And you have this thing that is worth a lot of money. That is the life of the homeowner. Now, it is at this point in the conversation that many renters will bring up property taxes, specifically how they don't have to pay them. That's true, but the landlord isn't just going to eat the cost. Renters do pay property taxes, maintenance, landscaping. It's just that all of those costs are built in to your monthly rent. Also, homeowners can think of their principal payments going towards the mortgage every month as a kind of forced savings. While renters only get shelter in return for their monthly payments, homeowners get shelter and build equity. Down the line, this equity can be tapped in the form of a home equity loan or line of credit, or can be returned to the homeowner when they sell the house to downsize or move. This forced savings is what most people refer to when they say a home is a great investment. So is being a homeowner always the right financial decision? Not necessarily. They usually have to save up a large down payment, and that is money that is tied up in the house rather than working for them in, say, the stock market. That's arguably what's called an opportunity cost, and it is something to consider. So again, is it better to rent or buy? That is a question that can only be answered by you and your unique situation. I hope that some of the points in this video will help you make your own housing choice. And if you do choose to buy, we're going to be doing a how to buy a house video in the future. If you have any questions or tips, please let us know in the comment section below. We would love to hear from you. And I will see you guys soon. I love you. Bye.
So, you need to understand some terminology, okay? Let's take a look at the definition of rent. According to dictionary.com, rent is a payment made periodically by a tenant to a landlord in return for the use of land, a building, an apartment, an office, or other property. So it says using 66A, write down what you think the words in the rent section mean. So, there is no 66A. So we'll move on to the next slide here. Here's some terminology, and this is in the these links will be in the presentation in Classroom. But a tenant is a person who enters into a lease and pays rent to occupy a space in an apartment or rental unit owned by another entity or person, also known as the lessee. Landlord, so a tenant can be a tenant or a lessee. The landlord is the owner of your property, and if you click these links, they'll take you to this these great websites that will tell you the meaning of all the different words. So here's landlord, how to talk to your landlord. But lease is a residential tenancy agreement. It's a contract between you and your co-tenants and the landlord or owner. This is where the amount of rent, the lease term, rules, regulations, and your landowner's responsibility, landlord's responsibility for the apartment are outlined in exchange for letting you live in the unit. Nearly every lease is a written contract, but in fact, a lease can even be an oral agreement. Term, the lease specified amount of time for which your lease runs, during which you'll occupy the apartment and pay rent to do so. This is usually a year, but it can be nearly in any time frame or even open-ended. Utilities, the other expenses in your apartment for which you're responsible that are billed and come on a consistent and reoccurring basis, sometimes depending on use. They can include cable, heat, water, electricity, internet, garbage removal, storage, parking, natural gas, rental insurance, grill, propane, sewer, and more. And all of those links are here also. How to save on your cable bill. Ways to save on your electric bill. So clicking those links in renter insurance, do you need it? Click those links and read what it has to say. So slide 7. The advantages of renting include the flexibility to move around. The landlord is typically responsible for maintenance and repairs, and monthly housing expenses are stable and fixed. The disadvantages of renting are your monthly rent payments build your landlord's equity, not yours. Rents can go up over time. Restrictions on upgrades or decorating, you can't really paint the walls. The landlord may choose to sell the home, requiring you to move on a short notice. Typically, renting is best for a shorter term, 3 years or less, if your future plans are uncertain. That would be the time to rent. Before signing a lease agreement, read the lease agreement. Is there security deposit details? What about pets? What penalties are there? Garage and parking, where's that? Are some of the utilities included in the cost of the rent? Who's responsible for what? Do you have to mow the lawn, or is the landlord going to do that? Who's going to remove the snow? Who's going to buy the light bulbs, etc.? Find out the average utilities. Renting a really cool old house in the downtown may be very expensive for utilities. Don't lock in too long. The whole advantage of renting is not being locked in. You don't overcommit on a long lease. Buy renter's insurance, and there's be more on insurance in a later unit. Renter's insurance is very cheap, and if anything ever happens, then all of your property in the apartment is covered. Next, we'll discuss owning a home. The advantages of home ownership include long-term investment. It builds equity and your net worth. It's more responsibility, but that means more rewarding, right? Freedom to update and customize as you wish, and you can reap certain tax advantages. The disadvantages of owning a home are monthly housing payments can be higher with property taxes, homeowners insurance, homeowners association dues, and maintenance costs factored in. There's less flexibility to move. Maintenance and repairs are your sole responsibility. You could lose money if you sell it too soon. The cost of home ownership. You'll have to pay your mortgage, which is the loan that you took out for your home. You'll pay on the principal plus interest. You have to pay taxes. You have to pay insurance. You have to pay the utilities and the upkeep of your home. You have to pay for repairs and updates. There's a PDF in the classroom for first-time home buyers guide, and that is right here. So make sure you look that over too. Everything you need to know before buying a home. It's in the lesson. When buying a home, keep in mind location, size, amenities, updates, appliances, utilities, the school district, etc. Estimate 1 to 3% of the total cost of the home to move in. That means moving costs, necessities once you're in. A lot of times you have to pay a fee to get cable turned on, or to get the water turned on, or the electricity turned on. And then the 28-36 rule, 28% of your gross income or less should be spent on housing expenses, and 36% of gross income or less should be made to pay your mortgage and all of your other debt payments. Price to rent ratio. Another quick tool to use to decide if you should buy or rent is the price to rent ratio. If the number is above 21, it is cheaper to rent. Price to rent ratio is the price of your home divided by the annual rent, which is your monthly rent times 12. For example, if you found a $200,000 home or a comparable one to rent for $1,500, you need to divide $200,000 by 12 times 1,500, because that's the monthly rent for the whole year, or 12 months, the whole year. This number is less than 21, so it's cheaper to buy. TC's 2 cents. Buy only if you plan to stay in the area. If possible, rent for 1 to 2 years if moving to a new area. Make sure you're going to stay and get a feel for the city. Understand all costs, not just home value. Make sure you understand the cost of utilities, maintenance, taxes, insurance, commuting costs, etc. Buy for the future. Think ahead. Are you going to have kids or not? Does a school district matter? Is your work going to change? And buy for the equity, not the appreciation or the monthly payment. And finally, 17, consider more than the monthly payment. Time at the location, what you can afford, your personal and family goals, home repairs, and when choosing to rent or buy a home, consider all factors when choosing a place to live. There are many things to consider when deciding whether to buy a home or rent. Here's an interactive that helps you look at different decisions. And this is in Classroom, this link right here. Is it better to rent or buy? How long do you plan to stay? And this is interactive. So one very important factor, but not the only one, our estimate will improve as you enter more details. And so the price of the home, what's the price of the home? 300, okay, do we want to, let's go 111,000, we'll say. How long do you plan to stay? And what are your mortgage details? You can just leave it all at that. What does the future hold? And you can drag those around and so on. And when you come down here, additional renting costs. And so then you can see how this goes. If you can rent a similar home for less than $806 per month, then renting is better. Okay, so it's just showing you this is really kind of a neat thing to do if you're trying to decide whether to buy a home or to rent. So go to today's lesson and complete the assignment 6.3a, and actually you are going to use this calculator to do that.